If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description. Welcome to MINDSHOCK True Crime. This is the Steven Avery series, episode 30, The Burn Pit. Now, we've gone over burn pit inconsistencies and all the issues with the burn pit versus the burn barrels versus the remains sprinkled over the Manitowoc County gravel pit, Redaunt's property, Steven Avery, or one of his psychic personalities trying to frame his own sister, Barb Yanda. And if you haven't checked out those previous episodes, check those out. Today, we're going to focus specifically on irrefutable manipulation and framing and altercations to the burn pit itself. Why was law enforcement doing this? Were there no remains there? Were they planted? Obviously, of course, we have to reiterate the cadaver dogs never hit on the burn pit because the dogs were not in on the frame-up job. They didn't know about it, so they were just trying to do their job loyally, like dogs do. They did not hit on the burn pit. All right, so yeah, we'll be going over photographs entered into evidence, why there are so many alterations, inconsistencies, flat-out manipulations. Something the so-called the guilters definitely don't want to look at. They don't want to look at any actual evidence. They just want to pretend Avery and Dassey are guilty no matter what. Very strange things. Of course, the coroner wasn't even allowed on the scene. I mean, we have unprecedented frame-up and or botch job activity at the Avery salvage yard. Nothing new, of course, for people that are looking at the case objectively, logically, and neutrally, which is the goal of MINDSHOCK. Once again, if you enjoyed the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications if you like the podcast. Hit the like button. Share it across social media platforms to keep up awareness in the case. Questions, comments, thoughts, theories, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings, comments of any kind, leave them in the comment section. You can check us out Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case, topic, logical analyses, requests, as well as co-podcasters. And if you're in a high enough Patreon tier, you can also have a guest spot on the podcast. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the burn pit and everything that entails, some sad news in the Making a Murderer Truther community. Eric O's has passed, sadly, way before his time, and he's done a lot of good in trying to promote and keep up awareness in law enforcement corruption and incompetence, particularly in Wisconsin, particularly in the Steven Avery, Brendan Dassey case. So sad news there. He will obviously be very missed by the people in the community who never stopped researching and never stopped pushing for the truth. So we don't, obviously, with the botch job, the frame job, the release here of evidence photos in different orders, we're going to do the best we can and to try to assemble this in chronological order from available evidence and available dates here. Now, what's still kind of strange is Steven Avery's burn pit is right next to a propane tank. And this is something that, from the beginning of the case in the earlier episodes, I mean, the people alleging that Steven Avery is the greatest criminal mastermind in the history of crime with not only the cleanup job, not only the split personality, some of which would have to have been psychic to kind of foresee how all of this was going to play out. Some of his personalities want to frame him, want to make sure he gets caught. Other personalities are just these criminal geniuses. I mean, that's the only way to make sense of this. Is he the love child between a Navy SEAL and MacGyver? How is he able to execute this murder and cover-up and burning with all these countless people coming and going on the property while having got so many conversations with them and phone conversations? I mean, while appearing completely nonchalant. I mean, this guy, if Avery did it, he's definitely the greatest criminal mastermind genius in the history of crime. I mean, who else can fake being innocent if he's guilty this well? I mean, it's uncanny. But the fact that this guy has a giant burn pit right next to his propane tank I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. The people alleging that he pulled this off, it's mind shocking. Mind shocking. But here we go. This first image is Exhibit 365, and you can find this on StevenAveryCase.org. The guilters all pretend, obviously, all of these podcasters and researchers only watch the biased Making a Murder documentary and based all their opinions on that, which, again, that documentary sure was biased. It only exposed 1% of the corruption and incompetence of law enforcement in Manitowoc and state officials. This is the whole reason for this MindShock podcast series, to put the truth to light. I mean, some people still think Avery threw the cat in the fire when he admitted to doing it. So, and the documentary didn't even touch on that. So yeah, very, very biased documentary, very, very slanted in the favor of law enforcement. So this first image, Exhibit 365. So this appears to be November 6th around noon. So the bucket in these photographs appears for the first time on November 7th during the afternoon flyover. There is a white 5-gallon bucket of food that appears near the kennel. But in this image, Exhibit 365, there is no such bucket. Also note that there is no garden hoe touching the tire. There's no tape around the Avery's barrel in the background of the image either. So this is all very, very critical into how everything is going to play out with this scene manipulation. Now, keep in mind what was reported is that Avery actually left for the Crivets cabin on November 4th, 2005. So this is after Lank and other law enforcement already searched Avery's trailer, because Avery is on the 5 o'clock news. So this is 5 p.m. onward, November 4th, 2005, saying he already allowed police to search his trailer. So after the search, and this interview was supposedly taken the night before, which would have been November 3rd. So he's leaving for Crivets on November 4th after allowing police to search his property. Is that the behavior of a guilty man? I don't know. If he denied the search, that would point to more guilty. But if according to guilters, if he's the greatest criminal mastermind of all time, and he knows he pulled off the greatest cleanup job in the history of crime, and there's nothing to find, no evidence of Hallback murdered in the bedroom in his trailer, no evidence that she was murdered again and shot in the garage, which might have had too many vehicles to even fit Avery, Dassey, Hallback with any kind of movement. So, yeah, very, very strange, very, very telling. So, once again, Avery left for the Crivets cabin November 4th. So, in these images we're looking at, this is November 6th. So this Avery salvage yard is seized by law enforcement. So they could do whatever they want here, even though Manitowoc's not supposed to be the lead agency. They seem to be finding everything while Calumet County just sits around on beds or whatever. But anyway, yeah, so we see here no 5-gallon bucket, no police tape, and no garden hoe touching the tire. All right. So another photo we have also from around noon, because according to the weather report, you can find historical weather reports, it was less cloudy after noonish than before noon that day. We're talking November 6th here. So another photo here, this is Exhibit 50, 050. There is one shovel near the pit. There is scattered ash and debris on the pit with a central pile in the middle. Hard to see a little bit. Debris includes a soda can and some brush. Now here's another photo. Exhibit 363 also looks like around noontime. You could also note the dog's positions here different positions. So this is a closer view. This is to the right of the 5x4 burn pit area. You can see that there's the remains of a bench car seat from prior to Halloween. In the grass, you can see that there are some long-handed garden tools. And this long tool here ends up next to the burn area of Avery's just 2 days later, before the crime lab's arrival. So there's so much staging and funny business in this unsecured so-called crime scene with no evidence of a crime at that time. So now, here is an image. This is captured by a queso camera, November 6, 2005, 12:22 p.m. And this is an electronic capture, so supposedly this timestamp is verifiable. So again, no dog bucket next to the kennel. The bucket doesn't appear until after this photo is taken, so it had to appear after 12:22 p.m. but before the November 7th flyover. And here we can see the flyover. You can see that this long-handed tool by the grass, the same tool that's moved next to the pit at some point between November 6th and November 8th. And this is Exhibit 44. Once again, you can find all of these on StevenAveryCase.org. Now, there's also a video, Walk Through Avery Property. You can find this on YouTube. This is approximately 3:30 p.m. The quality's not that great. But this is after visiting Steven Avery's trailer where the clock says 4 p.m. So the white bucket has now been placed outside of Bear's house, the dog. So what does this all mean thus far? It means we can't trust anything about the scene. Innocent or guilty, this is an ever-changing scene before the arrival of crime lab technicians. And of course, no coroner. Coroner not allowed on the scene. All right. So, from the flyover, okay, so now we're going to move to November 7th. So, Baldwin is now guarding Steven's burn barrel, 1:15, from 1:15 to 3:39. So it's somewhere within that time frame, and you can see the white bucket next to the doghouse. Now, the bucket of food next to the kennel appears between 1 p.m. on November 6th and 1 p.m. on November 7th. Now, here we have aerial footage, flyover footage. It's November 7th, 4:02 p.m. So you can see this small white bucket, which is the bucket of dog food. It was not there the day before. So someone clearly went next to Bear to leave the bucket. Now, if you guys remember Jost and his testimony, he says that on November 7th, he couldn't get to the bucket. The bucket was already there when Jost goes to feed Bear. And of course, we don't know who the bucket belonged to, or we don't know who put the bucket there. Now, to all the guilters, the illogical coincidence theorists, whose cognitive dissonance and indoctrination into the cult of state and authority worship is so severe, they just bought the excuse that law enforcement couldn't get to the pit, couldn't search the pit, couldn't do anything with the pit because there was a dog there. As if law enforcement has zero experience with dogs, zero dog handling officers, no way to contact animal control of any kind or secure any kind of scene because there's a dog there. I mean, wow. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. So now, November 8th, still no crime scene tape. No large rocks from holding the November 9th tarp. So there are red flags placed around the mallet. So mallet was taken November 9th, 12:21 p.m. This is November 8th. This is exhibit burn pit chair frame. So there's no sifting equipment here, no tarp, and this picture was taken before Erdl and Zhang arrived to help Sturtevant and Jost sift. There are 2 shovels near the pit where there used to be one on November 6th. Very interesting. So someone took the long-handed garden tool that was on the grass near the small water bowl on the 6th, moved it directly next to Avery's pit. Now, how could this all have been done if they were so terrified and shaking in their boots regarding Bear, the dog? They claimed the dog was too scary to properly examine the pit. And they, again, no contact with animal control, no dog handling officers. They're just that terrified. I mean, there's a missing person. What if Teresa Hallback's not dead? They can't even search a scene because they're shaking in their boots over a dog? I mean, these are supposedly... Guilters really think that these are competent officers here? Or they just made it all up because, again, from the alteration... the clear alteration here of all of this stuff around the burn pit, they seem to be moving around it quite easily and not afraid of the dog in any way. So, again, a lot of bizarre issues here. So someone was clearly accessing this burn pit before it was processed, but after photos were first taken on November 6th. Okay, so Exhibit 047, November 8th, no crime scene tape, red flags around the mallet, no sifting equipment, no tarp, and this photo was also taken before Erdl and Zhang arrived to help Sturtevant and Jost sift. Okay, 2 shovels. Now, there's also a garden hoe that's touching the tire now that was not there prior. Again, this scene has been heavily altered and manipulated. Who did all this stuff? Who knows? But they must have not been afraid of a dog. So, November 8th, around noon, we have this particular image. There is a tank wagon in front of Dassey's with a long drain towards the back of the house, suggesting that this is a septic tank wagon which was there on November 8th, according to Jost, who was guarding the septic tank in the morning hours. The white dog food bucket is there at the doghouse, and then barrel number 645 and 7922 was put back on one where Steven Avery's barrels stood 2. This was done the 7th at 3:45. And this is a zoomed in from image 8691. All right, also from 8691, this is the same setting as the previous photograph, approximately the same time, given the shadows we can notice here, and the burn pit has not been taped off. Okay. So now we're going to go to Making a Murderer, Season 1, Episode 3. This is closer to the beginning of the episode. This is from 57 minutes and 8 seconds remaining on the episode. The photo looks to be part of a batch from the previous photos. So there's a clearer view here of the mallet, which was taken on November 9th, and the garden hoe is touching the tire. Again, notice the difference between November 6th. Then we also see the remains of the bench seat that Steven Avery explained on the jail calls that this was from before Halloween. So when did this fire occur? Because again, if you've seen the episodes that we went over So-called evidence, the legend of the bonfire, how nobody saw any bonfire at all. Redaunt was the one who originally claimed there was a small barrel fire, but no bonfire. So nobody reported any bonfire. So what was this fire from? This was not from Halloween. This was prior to Halloween. So if there was no bonfire on Halloween, that means anything in the burn pit would have been prior to Halloween and having nothing to do with Teresa Hallback. All right, next image here we have the fire pit and hammer. This is November 8th. So again, there are no large rocks here from the tarp that Ertl and other individuals put down on November 8th. So this is from November 8th, but before Ertl started working on the scene. The hammer was taken on November 9th, the following day. Okay, the next image here we have from the Information Discovery TV show. These are aerial shots, and this is from November 9th. So now there's a tarp on the burn pit, and we have a scene that does not look like what has looked like thus far. And the tape, of course. So November 9th from the news, the pit is tarped but not excavated. So based on the shadows, this can be estimated around 11:30 a.m. Now, around 11:30 a.m. We have several different images here from overhead views. You could clearly see the tarp and the tape. And again, you can really see how close that burn pit area is next to the propane tank. All right, November 9th, this is from Making a Murderer, Season 1, Episode 6. 25 minutes, 8 seconds remaining of the episode. And this would be approximately 3 p.m., judging from the shadows here. The burn pit is now tarped, and there are large stones holding down the tarp. So let's move to November 10th. This is same episode. Just shortly after, this would be November 10th now, prior to the processing of the scene. And you can see here the layer of black crust that is described as having soil tire mixture in the pit. This mixture is described by Pevito as being broken apart. You could also see water bottles being strewn about here, and I guess that's for the people working there. Now, let's look at November 10th, and this would be shortly before noon. This was apparently... This is from Ken Kratz's video this would be November 10th. This would be before noon. And you can see the smooth, hard burned crust that Pevito says he broke apart. You could see the two-tone char in the burn area. The debris that were visible on the 6th in this burn area was sifted and collected on the 8th by Ertl, Zhang, Sturtevant, Jost, and Sipple. Some of these names should be familiar. So, Making a Murderer has a subtitle here, Human Cremains Found November 8th, Avery Property Search Day 4. However, this is not accurate. This picture was actually taken November 10th in the AM. And you can see this aerial shot on November 10th from a Fox News report. Looks to be about 3 p.m. And this image as well, Dassey Exhibit 169. And you can see how the scene is ever changing here. Also November 10th here, Exhibit Burn Pit 2. And you can see that it all matches up to November 10th based on the contents that we're seeing here. All roughly 3 p.m. based on all the shadows. So we can see that it's all November 10th. And you can see the water bottles and all of these things corroborating with November 10th roughly 3 p.m. Now, notice this barrel here, Exhibit Burn Pit 1. All of a sudden, there seems to be this red barrel here. It's quite bizarre. The mixing and matching, of course, and no chain of custody for verification of anything. Yeah, quite bizarre. I mean, I don't know. The guilters obviously have their heads buried so far in the sand they can't explain any of this. But it just, none of this really makes any sense. Like, what kind of frame, if there was a frame job, what is all of this evidence of? Because this scene is ever changing. So keep in mind, Avery left for the Crivets cabin early morning, November 5th. And I don't know if I said that right earlier. Brendan Dassey left with Chuck on the 4th. So who's doing all of this staging and alteration of the burn pit? Important questions to ask. What's going on with the burn barrels? Important questions to ask. So now this next image, the Exhibit Burn Pit View, that's what it's titled, November 10th, it looks like it's closer to sunset. So it'd be somewhere around 4 p.m., after 4 p.m. We have these images, quite a different story here. So this image looks like it's from November 11th, and the metadata here from image 1721 is 9:23 a.m. This is Exhibit 49, Burn Pit. Now here we have news footage, November 11th, the excavation around 10 a.m. November 11th, so this is all from the aerial views of the excavation, approximately 10 a.m. And then we have this 11:58 image according to metadata, November 11th. So what is there to glean from all of the information here in these images? Clearly people were altering the burn pit. Clearly the dog was not an issue in doing such. So does this point all to a clear frame-up job, planting? I mean, how is the scene even processed? Obviously it wasn't secured. I mean, nothing about this is above board. I mean, how can you say that Steven Avery had a fair trial? The scene wasn't secured. Nothing about the investigation or the excavation was above board. We just have so many unanswered questions here. If this was a frame-up, I mean, look at all the inconsistencies here. So Ertl also said that the photos taken on November 8th were not taken by him or his team. So the rake that appeared between the 6th and the 8th, it was by the small white water bowl on the grassy area on the 6th, and then it's right next to the pit by the 8th. So before it was processed, there's all this funny business going on. So also keep in mind that there were no bones or anything appearing in that burn pit until after all the funny business at Cuss Road, which we've gone over many times in the past. It probably needs its own dedicated episode because there's funny business we didn't even touch upon. But yeah, I mean, how many coincidences is one going to believe regarding this scene, regarding what was found when and by whom? About a $36 million lawsuit at play, who had nothing better to do than to kill someone who was supposed to be on his property that he went around telling everybody about. I mean, and then of course, let's not get into the cleanup job, the multiple personalities, some of which had to have been psychic in order to pull all this off, while being the love child of MacGyver and a Navy SEAL. And then of course, we went over this before as well, how the laws of physics were violated in terms of temperatures and the length of which cremains would have to be burnt to be reduced to ashes, and the inconsistencies with the plastic that wasn't melted all the way regarding the cell phone and all these other issues guilters don't want to talk about. I mean, none of this case really makes it. The case against Steven Avery doesn't make any logical sense. Yeah, he might be guilty, but none of this evidence against him is even close. I mean, we're not even ballpark burden of proof being met beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, it's as far as you can get, basically. It's just mind-shocking and stunning. So, just, there's so much to go over regarding this case and how nothing was done properly. It's just really, really bizarre, particularly the people who can't fathom. They're too mentally weak and indoctrinated into the cult of state and authority worship. They're too far gone coincidence theorists who just can't fathom that people would frame this guy. The same people that did it again in his 85 frame up. And then, of course, he got out. He made them look bad. Bruised egos, of course, all around. And that's not even considering the $36 million lawsuit. So if they framed him before when there wasn't a $36 million lawsuit or them looking bad about him getting exonerated, what makes guilters think they wouldn't do it again with so much more on the line if they didn't do it again? Just really, really bizarre. And, of course, that's even without getting into the fact that Hallback was spotted after she left Avery's salvage yard, and I went over those in previous episodes. If you haven't checked them out, make sure to check out those episodes. It is not a fact that Teresa Hallback didn't leave Avery's salvage yard. There's a ton of information and a ton of evidence from cell phone data to witness reports stating she left the Avery salvage yard alive. And do we even know she's definitively dead? Again, some non-matching DNA tests are just, what do they prove? They don't prove anything. Again, once you get into the actual nitty-gritty, instead of just believing propaganda headlines like the guilters do, if you actually apply logic, reason, critical thinking, you'll see that these tests are not anywhere near conclusive, not anywhere near beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof has just simply not been met. Avery's presumption of innocence violated, and he clearly didn't get a fair trial, so why not give the guy a fair trial? Isn't everyone in the U.S. entitled to one? Just bizarre happenings regarding this case, which, as I've stated before, it's like a common sense test for adults. Guilters clearly don't pass it. And it also will probably end up being taught in law schools as the definitive frame-up case on what happens when law enforcement frames an individual and when corrupt state officials, all cover it up and prevent a fair trial from occurring. So hope you guys enjoyed another edition of MINDSHOCK True Crime in the Steven Avery series. Plenty more to come. If you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just click the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button. Share it across social media platforms. Keep the awareness up. Questions, comments, thoughts, theories, suggestions, debunkings, rebuttals, thoughts of any kind, leave them in the comment section. And you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case, topic, logical analyses, or co-podcaster requests. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.